Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a beloved series of middle-grade novels by everyone's favorite literary uncle, Rick Riordan. They're also, to be honest, a pretty good guide map of me being the person that I am. Like, when I was a kid, I used to be upset because I didn't have ADHD, so that meant I couldn't be a demigod. But then I got diagnosed 2 years ago, and 18-year-old me was genuinely excited that that was now a possibility. But in addition to those personal truths, Percy Jackson is also the recipient of a pitch-perfect adaptation. And no, I am not talking about the Logan Lerman movies. Those were bad. I am instead talking about The Lightning Thief, a Percy Jackson musical. But before we dive into that, hello, my name is Maggie, also known as @TheMaggieHill. I talk about movies and TV and plenty of other stories, so if you want to stick around, please hit that subscribe button below. It would honestly be super helpful. And you can also check me out on Instagram, which I think I'll put down there as well, and if I forget, that's really mean of me. Also, spoilers for the first Percy Jackson book, by the way. With an off-Broadway debut in 2014 and a new version of the show premiering just 3 years later, I genuinely think that The Lightning Thief musical is one of the best adaptations of anything ever. It has a tone consistent with the original novel, is understandable for a child audience while still having emotional complexity, and honestly just gets what it is that drew fans to Percy's story in the first place. And part of that, I think, is the show's ability to portray the unfairness of the demigod world, or, allegorically, the unfair and random nature of our world in general. When we first meet Percy Jackson, it is with the line, "Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood." Coincidentally, the musical also introduces us to Percy with that line, but I think it's generally a good tone setter for what this character's central problem is. He doesn't want any of the things that are happening in this story to happen to him. As a troubled kid who's been expelled from nearly anywhere and can't seem to catch a break, Percy wants nothing more than to be normal. It's what's compelling about him, especially to neurodiverse kids. And I think that was somewhat forgotten in other versions of his story. But in the musical, as in the book, Percy is not a figure to be jealous of or idolized. Played beautifully by the actor Chris McCarroll, he is a frightened preteen whose main reactions to the supernatural are awe, fear, and general confusion. Which is completely understandable and super applicable to one song in particular that I think, along with its reprise, define the entirety of why this musical works.
6 schools in 6 years, been kicked out of every place. Everything I ever do is wrong, never find where I belong. Everybody on my case.
The song Good Kid makes me cry every time I hear it. It comes at a time in the story when Percy has lost his mother, found a home with other demigods at Camp Half-Blood, and then is told he has to leave that home to go on a quest and return a lightning bolt he never even stole. It is all exceedingly unfair. And so Percy sings a song about this lack of stability and how at some point it has to be his own fault, that all he wants is to be a good kid, and he can't understand why the universe won't let him. According to the lyrics, all he needs is one last chance to prove he's good enough for someone. And it is heartbreaking. This is Percy, whose dad left him, but whose mother taught him the strength of a kind heart. Nothing that's wrong about his life is his fault, but it's still his life. And when you're living in that, sometimes knowing the truth isn't enough. So here we have a song sung by a broken kid who just wants to do the right thing, but who feels helpless in front of the vast unfairness of all he's experienced.
And all I need is one last chance to prove I'm good enough for someone.
Then he goes on his quest, and he wins, and he finds a home, until one conversation with a camper named Luke. Luke is a son of the god Hermes, who has been at Camp Half-Blood nearly his entire life, and becomes a sort of older brother figure to Percy when he first figures out he's a demigod. But after Percy returns from his quest, he ends up talking to Luke, who, in the musical, sings a reprise of Percy's original Good Kid. 'Cause it turns out that Luke is the one who stole the lightning bolt, and set the gods on a warpath that would ultimately destroy them. When he's asked to explain, he says the following: "He did everything the gods have ever asked, but so what?" Instead of Percy's,
I swear I never stole anything. I never meant to hurt anyone. I swear that I'm a good kid who's had a bad run.
Luke sings,
I don't care if I hurt
by repeating the chorus of Good Kid with Luke's own lyrics in his confession, the musical, like the book, is asking us to understand Luke's perspective in relationship to Percy's. Because what he's experienced is also unfair. Luke didn't ask to be abandoned by his family or by Hermes. He is a kid, and he is afraid and angry at the world and his parents and the gods. And yeah, that led him down a different path than Percy, who had his mother's compassion to guide him. But his cruelty in response to unfair circumstances does not justify those unfair circumstances. It doesn't make the foundation of his anger wrong. Riordan's exploration of that fact is actually one of my favorite things about the original novels, so seeing it now in the musical is really hopeful and refreshing. Because those guys get it, and they wrote a song about it, and it's a really good song. The world is scary, and it is random and unfair, and we're allowed to be angry about it. But we have a choice of how we approach that anger. Will it be like Luke, with bitterness and cruelty? Or like Percy, with some kind of compassion? The Lightning Thief musical, by transforming that lesson into its own format using tools like reprise that only a musical has quickly become one of my favorite adaptations of all time. It's also just like a good album. So sue me, I guess. And that's the video. Please let me know who your godly parent was in the comments. Mine was always Athena. And I will see you guys in the next one.